Alrighty, if you're visiting us for the first time or watching us online, my name is Efrain Pena. I'm the campus pastor here at South Hills Santa Clarita. My heart and my prayer this morning, as it is every Sunday morning, is that God would grab a hold of your heart and take you on an incredible journey through His Word today and inspire you and encourage you to live a life differently, to live a life that brings Him honor and glory above all, but do life differently than how you came in. And so we are wrapping up our 2 month long series, summer series, The Thing Behind the Thing. And this has really been about understanding why we think the way that we think, say the things that we say, and do the things that we do. And so the root behind all of this has been this simple primal question. It's a question that if you took the assessment, it can get you your primal question. And we have addressed so many of them, right? We've addressed the am I safe? Am I secure? Am I loved? Am I wanted? Am I successful? And last week, am I good enough? And for some of you have been like, man, oh, but I'm this one. Oh, but I'm this one as well. Oh, and I'm this one too. And you will notice that we go through this series, or as we've gone through this series, that yeah, you probably have some attachments to some of these other questions and whatnot. And so today we are wrapping up our series with this last final primal question, and I'm sure a lot of you have probably been there before, and that is, do I have a purpose? Excuse me, do I have purpose? Now, when you were younger, did you ever have someone influence your life, speak into your life, inspire and encourage you, right? And talk to you about doing big things. Excuse me, doing big things when you grow up, right? To dream big. I had many people. My mom was a single parent, and there were people, family members, and coaches, and they always wanted me to dream big. Like, man, you could do incredible things, right? A math teacher who pulled you aside, after class and said that they could see you becoming a world-renowned engineer, right, or a scientist if you kept putting yourself or pushing yourself. Or a mom who always said you had a gift of storytelling. In other words, you talked a lot, but did a gift nonetheless of storytelling and encouraged you to dream one day of writing a book that would impact and inspire others around the world. Or maybe a mentor that told you your leadership skills could one day help run a company or even lead a community, pushing you to only envision a future where you can make a significant impact. When we have these moments, church, right? Moments like these, it can set into motion this kind of underlying fear of living a purposeless and meaningless life. Like, no, I was told that I could aspire, that I could do big things out there. If I just push myself, that I can accomplish these great goals. And so uh, I can never not have purpose. My life can never have no meaning. We all, at some point or another, have found ourselves wondering what our purpose in life would be, or it is for that matter, right? Or maybe thinking, am I really impacting the world by being a teacher? Just because we have a lot of teachers in our church. Could I really impact or change the world by being a parent? Could I impact or change the world by being a student or an athlete or whatever it is that you do in life? Could I really make a difference? But for some of us, this feeling of living a life without meaning is the most haunting or painful thing that you have ever experienced. Because maybe for you, despite having a stable job and a comfortable life, you often find yourself feeling empty and wondering if anything that you do truly matters. There are days when you wake up with a deep sense of dread, questioning if your daily routine has any, any real purpose. And the thought of living a meaningless life is almost unbearable. Like, no, I cannot not do anything today. There has to be a purpose and a plan for me out there. Friends, sometimes you feel like you're just going through the motions, and the fear just so you know, like I'm still gonna go out because I use my hands a lot and I start talking like this. So anyway, and so we ask the questions: Am I impacting anyone? Do my efforts really make a difference? Am I doing enough to help the world? Does my life even matter? Does my life even matter? If this is you, chances are you grew up in a home where making a difference was held up as the ultimate value. Listen, if you're not changing the world, don't come in this house until you've done something to change the world. I told you last week, I think my mom was saying, you playing sports and be like, did you win it? She said, I would say, no. She goes, then why are you playing? What's the fun in that? Maybe as a child you felt challenged to do something big with your life. But because big was never defined, maybe what you were left to wonder as a kid was, well, how much is big? like big to some people is like this much, and big to other people is like this much. So how much is big? How many lives must be saved? How many people must I impact? And while your parents may have been trying to encourage you to feel like you can do anything, the message that you received, the message that kind of was inputted in you was that you should do everything. You should do everything. Even if you even if you came from a home of humble beginnings, you felt this intense pressure to make something of yourself. My mom would always tell me, she worked in a factory all her life, right? And she would always say, you better not wind up in this factory. I'm like, what are you talking about? I like it here. The food comes to you. Like, that was the greatest thing ever. Like, and it's always time to eat, right? The food truck was outside. I thought it was the greatest thing. They had these big, what do you call them? The big dogs. What do they call them? Remember the Great Danes? They had several of them. And as a little kid, I would jump on the back because they were like a horse to me. I had fun in my mom. My mom said, you better not be here. Better not see you here, right? She had big plans for me. And so even if you came from humble beginnings, you felt this intense pressure to make something of yourself. You were commissioned by your family to live an unwasted life. Average was the enemy. Since my girls were young, I've always been telling them, man, you were destined for greatness. You were destined to change the world. And if you grew up in a Christian home, you might have felt all of these things and more because conversations were framed with an eternal perspective, right? small and faithful weren't as important as big and flashy. The mission for the world to take notice of you. And when this happens, this is seen as holy and valid and living in your purpose. But whatever your experience might have been, it has left you deeply wondering, do I have a purpose? Do I have a purpose? Now, we're going to go into the Bible. We're going to see or be introduced to this man in the Bible whose deepest concern is whether his life has meaning. To know that his life and actions are contributing to a greater purpose or plan than that's bigger than himself. His name is Jeremiah. And Jeremiah was born into a priestly home or a priestly family and in a town of Anatot. And this small town is located just a few miles northeast of Jerusalem. But his father, and I'm probably messing his name, but Hilkiah, right, was a priest, which right off the bat tells us that Jeremiah grew up in a religious and devout environment. Being born into a priestly family, Jeremiah would have been very familiar with the rituals and the teachings and the traditions of the Jewish faith from a very young age. And so imagine the expectations about his role in the religious community. No, Jeremiah, this is what you're going to do. No, who cares you like running in the dirt? This is what you're going to do. Right? Doesn't matter if you built, this is what you're going to do, right? And from a very young age, Jeremiah was aware of a unique calling on his life. So if we open up Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 4 to 5, it says, "The Lord gave me this message," right? And this is Jeremiah speaking. "I knew you," well, this is Jeremiah writing this, but he's saying the Lord is speaking. "I knew you before I formed you in your mother's womb. Before you were born, I set you apart and anointed you as my prophet to the nations." Now imagine the deep sense of responsibility that comes with this powerful revelation over his life. The weight of this calling most likely only intensified Jeremiah's focus on purpose as the central concern of his life. Listen, this was spoken over my life. Like nothing else matters but this. I have to fulfill this purpose. Now, Jeremiah lived during a tumultuous period of Israel's history, witnessing the moral and spiritual decline of the nation and the impending Babylonian exile, right? And so while the weight of his calling is intensifying his focus and determination, right, on his purpose as his central concern, he is also seeing and observing the decline, the disorder and chaos that his nation is going through. And God has chosen him. God has chosen him to be the voice to hopefully turn the people's hearts back towards God. That's weighty. That's a lot of weight there, right? And we can see just how deep the questioning of his purpose and calling is for Jeremiah and how God responds to him. In verse 6 to 9, he calls out, "O sovereign Lord, I said, I can't speak for you. I'm too young." The Lord replied, "Don't say I'm too young. For you must you must go wherever I send you and say whatever I tell you." Verse 8, "And don't be afraid of the people, for I will be with you and will protect you. I, the Lord, have spoken." Then the Lord reached out and touched my mouth and said, "Look, I have put my words in your mouth." Jeremiah now begins to believe that he is too young too young to do what God is asking him to do. And what God is asking him to do realistically feels too big for him. Again, the expectations of his role in the religious community, and it was that he was aware at a very young age, right? He knew what, man, I come from a priestly home. I'm supposed to hold these standards. He was well aware of that. And he can sense, right? Or we can sense that Jeremiah might be asking himself, how many lives must be saved here? Right? How many people must be changed? But is that even what God is asking Jeremiah to do? And when this deep emotional need of needing to be a part of something bigger than himself seemingly goes unmet for him, we see it play out in a couple of ways. Now follow along here. For Jeremiah, the first way this plays out for him in his scramble was he was consumed by the relentless pursuit of the perfect path. He was consumed. Like this, this is all he thought about. For being on the perfect path. Thank you, sir. That I was struggling with that mic in my hand. Right? Because the things weren't flowing as smoothly like they are right now. I'm Puerto Rican, we speak with our hands. Right? So the first way this plays out for him in this scramble is that he's consumed by the relentless pursuit of the perfect path. But things don't seem to go as expected. In Jeremiah 3:10, it tells us that the people refuse to listen to him. You talking? Whatever, right? They don't want to listen to him. He seemingly finds himself doing the very things that God is asking him to do, but because it's not going the way that he expected them to go, it feels meaningless or purposeless to him. And he has no problem expressing the frustration to God. In Jeremiah 15, you got to read this for yourself. I'm skimming through it, but 15 and 18, he begins to ask God, why does my suffering continue? If this is what you call me to do, and I'm doing what you're asking me to do, why is it not going the way I want it to go? Because I'm going to be honest, God, your help here seems useless. It's not working for me. And so this overwhelming sense from Jeremiah's words is that this isn't how I thought this would go. God, I feel like I'm doing all the things that you're wanting me to do, but it doesn't seem to be leading me down this sense of purpose in my life, feeling like it's making any kind of difference, like it's having an impact on anyone. This idea of the perfect path consumed Jeremiah so much so that he goes as far as saying this to God. In Jeremiah 27, he says, he feels like he's been misled by God. Have you been there before? You're like, God, what's up with this? This is not how I told you I wanted this to go. Why did you mislead me, right? He's overwhelmed by this heavy burden of his calling, and he feels as though God has deceived him. God has deceived him into a role that has brought him nothing but ridicule, suffering, and pain. When what Jeremiah was longing for, all he wanted to do was have a purpose. And now he's in this position where people are not listening to him and they're making fun of him, and he's getting mad and frustrated. The second way this plays out for Jeremiah is that it is physical and spiritual exhaustion. Have you been there as well? You are physically and spiritually exhausted because he is so desperate to feel like he is making an impact with his life that he pours all of his time, all of his energy into his mission. We've been there before, often with little rest. And when he won't be able to stop because of this deep-seated fear of living a purposeless life that squanders his calling. He's so focused, hyper-focused, and he's so caught. He doesn't do anything else. He doesn't rest. He keeps asking the question, I'm not fulfilling my purpose. And like Jeremiah, maybe this is where you find yourself today. You find yourself spending countless hours researching and analyzing every possible option, paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice and missing the perfect opportunity. And so then what happens? You have this primal avoidance, right? All of this eventually leads to this endless chase of the perfect. Have you ever gone after the perfect? Right? And by seeking the perfect, you miss the purpose. You're so hyper-focused on getting it perfectly that you miss out on the purpose. This search for the ideal mission becomes your excuse to never act and live in a perpetual state of unease. Jeremiah 20, verse 14, 18 tells us that he curses the day that he was born. Jeremiah doesn't find himself wondering if he is impacting anyone or if his efforts are making any difference or if his life matters. At this point in time in the story, he believes that it doesn't, that his life doesn't have purpose, that it doesn't matter. And maybe this is where you yourself find yourself today. Not wondering if you are impacting anyone, if you are making a difference, or if your life matters, but believing that it doesn't. So how do you shift? How do you shift from believing that your life is purposeless and lacking meaning to recognizing that no, absolutely not. My life does have meaning. My life does have purpose, right? It's significant in the things that you've already find yourself doing. How do we get there? I want to quickly give you two things. Two things that we see in Jeremiah that I believe reframe purpose and significance for us. And the first thing is this, right? Jeremiah starts to find courage in God's call over pursuing the perfect path. I want you to let that sit for a little bit. Let's marinate on that a little bit, right? Start to find courage in God's call over your life over pursuing the perfect path. Because I think we've all gone to a point in our lives, and you might be there today, where you are trying to pursue this perfect path. And just like we are the perfect place for imperfect people, and just like I said, nobody's perfect, there is no perfect path. Over time, we see the early reluctance and fear that he's had be replaced by a deeper conviction and courage that his purpose is rooted in God's will, not this perfect path that he thought it would be. So how does he start to find this courage? Well, in Jeremiah 15, 19 and 21, it says, this is how the Lord responds. Right? He says this, if you return to me, this is God speaking, I will restore you so that you can continue to serve me. If you speak good words rather than worthless ones, you will be my spokesman. You must influence them. Do not let them influence you. They will fight against you like an attacking army, but I will make you as secure as a fortified wall of bronze. They will not conquer you, for I am with you to protect and rescue you. I, the Lord, have spoken. Yes, I will certainly keep you safe, and from these wicked men I will rescue you from their cruel hands. This small shift in Jeremiah's words here about what God is replying back gives us a little bit of insight into the gradual change that we're seeing. And what God is saying to Jeremiah is, man, what I am calling you to do won't be perfect. It won't be easy and it won't be comfortable, but I will restore you. But I will save you. But I will deliver you. Jeremiah starts to learn that suffering and struggles are part of God's plan rather than the signs of his efforts failing. Does that make sense? Or not making a difference? Because true purpose is never experienced without the development of perseverance. In other words, we have to go through some stuff in order to persevere. There are going to be challenges. No matter what you want to accomplish in life, no matter what you think this path is, even if you stand here and say, God has called me to do this, I want to tell you today that path, that calling, there will be some challenges. There will be some challenges. True purpose is never experienced without the development of perseverance, right? So what produces perseverance? Well, Paul in Romans 5:13 says that suffering produces perseverance. In other words, challenges produce perseverance. And I'm going to bring this story real quick up before I continue. Is there was a game not too long ago that Noah struggled. Noah struggled to do the things that she wanted to do. The other team was not letting her do it. There was challenges that she faced. We talked about it. We kind of analyzed it. And we said those are things that are going to happen. But our mind frame on how we go about doing it has to change. Because as we suffer and we go through the challenges, it eventually helps us persevere. And the next day, she persevered. Her and her team persevered. The second thing Jeremiah does is that he reframes significance. Jeremiah starts to reframe what purpose, significance, and impact mean to him. Early on, it's clear that he was focusing solely on visible results. But I think he begins to see that maybe faithfulness and obedience are the true measure of his purpose. Jeremiah 26:12-15, he tells the people, the Lord sent me to speak every word. He's speaking with conviction now. He's speaking with courage. And I think earlier in Jeremiah's story, his purpose, meaning, and significance were heavily tied into the visible results of his efforts, the fruit. But what Jeremiah has learned is that purpose, meaning, and significance are not found in the fruit of our work, but our willingness to simply be obedient. To simply be obedient. I'll be honest with you. I thought our church would be 6 years in would be different, in a different season of life. I really did. Now I'm in a season of just obedience. I'm enjoying this season of just, this is what God has called me to do. This is what God has called me to do. And I find meaning and purpose in that, not in the fruit of it, but in simply just obeying. I know what God has called me to do. I'm willing to do that to the best of my ability. The fruits or the results are up to God. My significance is found in my obedience. In my obedience to Him and His Word. Your significance is found in your obedience to him. Look at what Jesus encourages the disciples to do in the Great Commission in Matthew 28:19-20 says, therefore go and make disciples of all the nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Teach these new disciples to obey all of the commands I have given you. And be sure of this, I am with you always, even to the end of the age. Basically what he's saying is be obedient. Be obedient. Jesus could have said to teach them a lot of things, but he knew that we would find significance, purpose, and meaning if we would just simply learn to obey. To simply do what he tells us to do. James 1:22 says, don't just listen, but do. Do as I say. Regardless of how small or big it might be, how ordinary or extraordinary it is, the significance is found in obedience, church. It's found in obedience. Some of you have not been able to get into this next step or this next level in your relationship with the Lord because there's a lack of obedience. When you start to find courage and strength in God's call and understand that the significance is not about the perfect path, but about the fruit. Not about the fruit, but simply about obedience. I think it teaches us something so important when it comes to our purpose. And that is this, that when you're tempted to wait around for the best thing, remind yourself of the significance of doing the next right thing. The next right thing. Tell our girls all the time, don't make the good choice, make the right choice. Make the right choice. Because what is good is misinterpreted. The right choice. What if God has instructed us? I'm going to wrap this up. What would it look like, church, if you believed that purpose wasn't found in the finish line? Purpose isn't found in the finish line, but about enjoying the day-to-day, the journey. The nooks, the crannies, the ups and the downs of the day. And being successful is not about the end of the journey, but how it flows, how'd you get there? What if purpose started to bring you freedom rather than stress, and joy rather than pressure? How might the week ahead, the month ahead, or the year ahead look differently if you weren't stuck finding your perfect calling? What if it were possible to find purpose and significance in your everyday life? I believe it is because every day there's an opportunity to do the next right thing. If you scored this question, do I have a purpose? Your homework assignment is to write 3 statements, just like the rest of us, to help define living in your primal truth. Maybe it's, I trust that my purpose is unfolding daily throughout my actions and my choices, even when the path isn't clear. Or that my value and my purpose are not defined by my immediate outcomes, but by my faithfulness to the journey that I am on. Or maybe it's I'm committed to living with intention, knowing that each step that I take is part of a greater divine plan. Friends, a movement is made up of people making moves. Make sure that you're making moves and simply doing the next right thing. Because he has called us to be obedient. And his word instructs us that God has given us a plan and a purpose in life, and it is good. I wonder if we would find it if we would just be obedient.
South Hills Church, I just want to take a moment and say thank you for watching our service online. Whether you're watching it for the first time or you're watching it again because you enjoyed the service so much from the weekend, I'd like to take a moment and dive into our giving. Every week we give people the opportunity to give back and give to the local church so that God can continue to bless your lives and bless your finances. Here at South Hills, we believe that everything comes from God. We believe that He's the one that chose us and brought us into this world, gave us our gifts and talents and abilities. And I just want you to know that when we give, we are giving back what God has already given to us. If you've ever seen any of our envelopes at a South Hills campus, you'll see on there that it says, every week at South Hills, your generosity is giving people the opportunity to live a better story. And there's a scripture on there in Matthew chapter 6, verse 21 that says, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So I want to encourage you today to click down below and set up your giving, whether it's for the first time or whether you're doing reoccurring giving. We have 4 ways to give here at South Hills. 1, you can do it in person at any of our campuses through an envelope. Or 2, you can actually text any amount that you would like to 84321. And the 3rd way is to download our Church Center app. I encourage you to do this one because the Church Center app gives you opportunity to stay connected with our church and your campuses. It's a great tool and resource for you to know what's going on. And the 4th way to give is to give online. You can go to southhills.org/give and you can set up your giving there. Whether you're a guest of our church or whether you are a member of our church, or whether you simply just like to watch our services, I encourage you to trust God with your finances so that He can bless and anoint your finances, and you can be trusting God in this journey of living life to the fullest. I love you, and thank you for watching our online service today.